Welcome again, faculty, to video 3 of our Blackboard Design Camp for Beginners. In this video, we're going to talk about the difference between an item and an assignment. So, when you are adding information or content to Blackboard, you can add it in the assignment section, or in the course document section, or wherever else you want to put it for your students, as long as you're consistent as to where you're putting your information. Now, when you're adding information to Blackboard, if you're in the assignments or in the course documents content area, you will see an option where it says build content, one where it says assessment, tools, and partner content. Let's focus on how you can add individual items or content to Blackboard. If you click on build content, you'll have a select number of different things you can add. You can add an item, or a particular file, which means like if you had a PowerPoint, you could add that PowerPoint right to Blackboard. You could put an audio file in there, a picture, a video, or a web link. I particularly enjoy using the item feature because it allows me to give instructions to my students as to what I want them to do with that particular item. I can add an audio or an image or video individually, but it'll just give me that one particular video without an explanation as to what I want them to do with it or what we're going to do with that information. So if you click on item, the first thing it's going to ask you to do is to name this particular item. And then you will see this text box here where you would type in any information or instructions that go with this particular item that you're giving for your students. Under an item, you can add things like video. You can add things like a picture. You can add hyperlinks in there if you want to, all within the same text box. Now, when you do the item, you can also attach files to this item. So if there's a handout or a document that you want to go with this particular information, you can add it by looking through your computer here. You can decide if your students are allowed to see this content, and you can also decide when and where you want them to actually access it. So if I want them to see it at a specific time, I can pick the specific time I want them to see it. So that will be when it's open. By default, all items or content that you add to Blackboard are automatically open unless you specify the specific time that you want it to be in. When you make an item, you just click Submit. And what you will see and what the students will see will be this icon that looks like a paper. That's very important for you to realize that. If you're using an item, it is a read-only item, which means the students can see the information, they can view any videos you may have attached to that, but they are not physically submitting anything to that item. It's a read only. They can only read the information that goes with it. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I go into one of my other courses, and if I go into an item, I'm just going to go into one of my items here to show you what I'm talking about. I can see here that this item, this icon indicates it's an item. So the students can read the information here. They can see the picture that goes with it, but they are not uploading or interacting with it. I can scroll down, and I can see that there's information here. And again, this is an item. So in this particular case, this is underlined, indicating that there is something in there that I want them to see. So there's some attachments here that I've added. If I wanted to click and see what that information looked like, I would see it as a text box because I'm the instructor. The students would just see whatever the information is that goes with this particular item. Again, they're seeing it, but they're not interacting with it. They're not uploading anything with an item. So this is just information. So here I'm telling them what to look for. They're seeing the information I want and what goes with it. All of these are items. Now, if you want your students to upload an assignment, meaning they're physically submitting an assignment or a document to you for grading, you have to do what's called an assignment, not an item. Let me show you. So if I go into my course, and I go to wherever I'm directing my students to go, instead of going to build content, I'm going to go where it says assessments. From here, I can add a test if I want, or I can add what's called an assignment. An assignment is when the student is physically going to be uploading something for a grade. When you make an assignment this way through Blackboard, it automatically makes a column in your grade center. So I'm going to click on an assignment. When I do that, it's going to ask me to name this particular assignment. So I want to name it something that's going to make sense to me and to the student. In the text box that follows underneath here, I'm going to put any corresponding information or instructions that go with this. It could be a video, it could be a picture, it could be when the item is due. From there, if there's any files that go with this, perhaps you have a rubric that shows them how they're being graded and you want to attach it, you can click on the Browse My Computer button and find where you have saved it on your physical machine. Unlike an item, when you do this, you will see a due date. You can actually indicate when the particular item is due, when this particular assignment is due for the students. Because it's an assignment that's going to go into your actual grade center, you have to give it a point value. Now, if this is an assignment that might be an extra credit assignment for the students, something that they can turn in for extra credit, what you would have to do is you would have to put a 0 in that spot. So therefore, any student who submits that assignment will get the extra credit, but it does not harm any of the other students who choose not to do it. You do have to put a number in this particular thing for it to work for the gradebook. Then, if there is a rubric that you're using through Blackboard, you could attach it here. And then you go to where it says Submission Details. By default, any assignment that you are submitting to Blackboard is a one-time submission, meaning the student has one time to upload it, and that's it. If you want to give the students more than one time to submit something, maybe it's a draft, or maybe they make mistakes and you want them to be able to submit it again, you have to click on where it says single attempt, click on that upside down triangle, and select multiple attempts. If you click multiple attempts, you have to indicate the number of attempts that they can have for this particular submission of the assignment. If you want them to have unlimited attempts, you can click on that and then they can submit as many times as you want. For your scoring attempts, by default, it wants to give you the last graded attempt, so the last most recent thing that they've put in for a grade. But you can decide which one you want. Do you want the item that got the highest grade? Because every time you submit something, you have to put in a grade for it. The lowest, or the first time they actually submitted it. By default, it's the last most recent thing that they uploaded. Then you'll see something that says grading options. Most likely you're not going to use either of these options, but enable anonymous grading means that you don't want to actually see who's submitting the assignment. It's anonymous. And delegated grading. Most likely you're not going to do that. Delegated grading means that someone else is grading it. Most likely you're not going to choose that. Where it says display of grades, this is up to you. How are you grading this particular assignment? If it's by score, that indicates points. So this is out of 10 points, 20 points, 30 points. If you want, you could also do it by letter. This is an A, B, C, D, or F. You could do it by percentage. This is out of 100%. Or it can be complete or incomplete. Did they do it or not? Whatever is under the primary is what the student will also see in their My Grade section in Blackboard. Now, there's another thing called the secondary display. For the secondary display, you have the same options that you can pick. The main difference is that the secondary display is not shown to students. So if you, for example, use points and you want to see what that would equate to as a letter grade or as a percentage, you could come over here and you can decide what that would look like. In your grade book, it would show up with the primary score, and then it would show up in parentheses, the secondary display would show what you want. The students do not see the secondary display, only the instructors. Then you have to decide, does this assignment go into the grade center? By default, it wants to calculate it. So if you do not want to calculate, you will unclick this. And then it is up to you if you want your students to be able to see this particular grade. By default, students can, but you can turn that off if you don't want them to be able to see the actual grade. Then you will scroll down. You have to make the assignment available, and if there's a specific time you want them to have access to this, you can say that. By default, if you make it available, it's open automatically. But if there's a specific time that you want it to be available, you would select the time and the date, and then you would select when it is open to and when it can close. By close, meaning that after that specific time that you have indicated, the student will not be able to submit this. So in my case, it would be 1:30 in the morning to 3 o'clock in the morning. Boy, this student's going to be pretty tired. So if I do that, I click on submit. And this is what you will see. When you do that, you will see an icon that looks similar to this. Now, because I didn't make this assignment available, it is gray, but you will see that there's a pencil and a ruler indicating that it is an assignment, something that a student is physically submitting, meaning it's going into the grade book. Notice how that looks different than an item. Item looks like a little paper. They can't submit anything to it. This way, with an assignment, they can actually submit something for an actual grade. So I'm going to go ahead and make this assignment available. And I'm going to show you what happens when you actually submit something to this. So I'm going to make it available. Remove the due date. It's the due date. I'm going to make it available now. I'm just going to take these things off. And now you should see that it's no longer grayed out. It gives me that little pencil and the ruler indicating that it's an assignment. Now for a student, you have to tell them, once again, to click on where it says assignment or the name of the assignment. When it's underlined, it has to be clicked on to access it. When a student goes into the assignment, they will see when it is due and how many points you have indicated this particular assignment is worth. What the student would then see, they would see whatever instructions you have given them, and then they will have two choices. They will have a Write Submission button and a Browse My Computer button. With the Write Submission button, the students would click on here and they would actually type in their information right into Blackboard. Now, we do not recommend that you use this version because when a student types in their submission, it just gives you the full text when you see it. It loses all formatting, so you don't have the common paragraph formatting that goes with it, and it's just the text. What we encourage students to do, though, is to attach it like you would add an email attachment, so that they would type it on a Word document of some sort, or maybe they're making a PowerPoint. They would click on the Browse My Computer button. They would select what the actual item is that they're trying to submit, and they have to click on Open. When they do that, their item will show up right here. The students then can write a comment to their professor, like, "Here's my work, professor," and they will click on Submit. Once they click on Submit, then it goes into your gradebook where you can actually grade it. So let's see what happens after a student submits an assignment. Right now I'm in Student Preview. I'm going to go to the actual assignment. Again, I'm going to click on the underlined words to access it. I'm going to see when it's due and how many points it is worth. I will see whatever instructions my instructor has given me. Then I'm going to come down to the Write Submission or the Browse My Computer button. I'm going to click on the Browse My Computer button. and then I'm going to click on Open. Now I'm going to actually click on where it says Submit. There it is. So there's my actual attachment, and I can add as many as I want before I click Submit. I'm going to click on the Submit button. And then what happens is I will see that this has been submitted. And then as the instructor, I can actually go in and grade this. So let's see what happens if I see it as an instructor. So let me show you how that works. So if I'm an instructor and I want to see if a student has submitted something, I can go into the Needs Grading under the Full Grade Center, and I will see the item listed here. I can click on the student's name, and then what I will see is I will actually see their actual submission here. In this particular case, it was a PowerPoint. So I can actually click on here and see what the student has submitted. So this is a PowerPoint they submitted, so I can go to the next slide if I wanted to see what they have. And I can actually provide commentary and feedback right from this screen. If I click on the pencil tool, I can draw on here and I can say, hey, look at this. Or I can add a comment to this. I can click anywhere and I can say needs work, and I can post it. So the students would actually be able to see my comment, and I can add another comment anywhere on here. The student can then click on that if they wanted to, and they could reply to that comment. To provide a grade for this particular assignment, I would go over here to the right, and I would see how many points this is worth. I can actually click on there and put the number of points that it's worth. And in this box right here, I can add any individual feedback to that particular student. That student would see it in their My Grades section as a comment. When I'm done, I will click on Submit, and then this will go into my gradebook automatically. Now it's been graded. It's no longer available to me on the Needs Grading, but if I go into the Full Grade Center, I will actually see that it was graded, so that's me right there, and a grade that came with it. So in this case, I got 4. So when you do an assignment, it automatically goes into your grade center.